All right. So, um, DrupalForge is a little bit background on DrupalForge. It's a community project and it's open source. It's set up as a nonprofit and it's a lot of it has. There's a lot of developers that are working on it, and a lot of folks are using it to build sites and demo sites, and a lot of agencies are using it. But we've had requests for creating different versions of it for different verticals. So one of the first ones is there are two ones that we're releasing. One is for agencies, DrupalForge for agencies, and the other one is DrupalForge for higher ed. So those are the two new versions of DrupalForge that we're releasing. And and so I'll talk about the one for higher ed today. So the higher ed, the need for DrupalForge comes in because, and I'll show you a demo a little bit later, but there's in the higher ed, there's always, the IT is always managing your operations, your risks, and your financial limits, where um, you have maintenance demands on the sites, on the infrastructure. You have financial limits where your budgets are in flux or going down, and you have risks where you have uh, organizations getting hit by different, you know, malware and stuff, and even ransomware, right? I don't know if the 66% of organizations hit by ransomware is a real number. This was generated by AI, so I doubt that. I think it's lower than that. Um, but there is ransomware that is prevalent in organization level. But this all of that burden falls onto the IT management, and especially if you are there's multiple things that's happening. I'll talk about that in a slide, but the 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 legacy in the legacy model, you have generally you have portals for students, you have faculty sites, you have marketing campaigns. All of those things are they're managed locally. You have local environments that are set up, and then they have standard monolithic environments where things are being launched. The risk of it is not only management of it, but when a site goes down or when the infrastructure goes down, it takes out all the sites, right? So that's the other monolithic IT provisioning system that a lot of schools struggle with is when they're managing their own infrastructure. Um, so this becomes a dangerous bottleneck for creating and managing your own platforms, and then especially when you're integrating it with outside platforms with AI. So there's a lot of operational cost hidden behind the scenes. The In the legacy model that people are, that people use today, that most organizations, most higher ed organizations are using today when they're hosting it themselves, is there's a provisioning speed that comes in. It's, days and weeks of ticketing back and forth for creating sites, for managing sites, for doing changes. There's the infrastructure logic that's essentially managing the infrastructure. Again, if there's one crash, it affects all the environments. There's the cost that that has to be managed, and if it's not managed properly, it can bloat over time if it's not, if people aren't paying attention to it. And a lot of times for infrastructure, the way the infrastructure today is set up is they provision the infrastructure, but it's not auto scaling. So when it's not auto scaling, you're paying for the infrastructure 24 by 7, even if it's not being used, even if the sites are not being used. Developer workflow, there's a lot of local setups that are being done. People are doing site building sites on their local dev environments, and uh, that has a lot of problems built into that as well. So the the sysadmin overhead for local setups is a lot too.
In
Um,
software development, we generally run into as much as 2 weeks onboarding staff or crossing them across agency projects. There's often laptop shipments, software installation, licensing, etc. This stuff is like a couple of minutes. It's kind of amazing.
yeah, I wanted to introduce Will. Will's our co-presenter. So yeah, Will, jump in anytime.
Hey folks, my name is Will Kirchheimer. I've got about 20 years of Drupal development and about 10 years in government platform development.
Um, okay, so the DrupalForge and DevPanel model is the provisioning speed is one of the fastest. We've optimized the heck out of it, so you can provision sites in less than 5 seconds. The infrastructure is based on cloud native infrastructure, all runs on Kubernetes, and it's very isolated. So each site is isolated, um, and there's a lot of redundancy built into it as well. The cost, from a cost perspective, you can set your size to auto pause and auto scale. So for dev environments, when you're not using them, they can scale down automatically, or they can actually even pause automatically. And customers have seen up to 80% in cost reduction. And for developer workflow, it's all cloud-based. So if a developer starts up an environment in the cloud, you can bring in other developers. You don't need to configure your laptop. And if you get stuck, you can actually bring in other developers to help you as well. And if there's a developer that moves from one project to another, you can take a project and assign it to another developer right away, very easily. So this is essentially it's the fastest way to launch sites and scale and build up your infrastructure at scale. So, and it's an open source project available right now for you guys for higher ed to use. So the engine behind DrupalForge is the DevPanel API. DevPanel is a commercial product. It's like a dashboard that it's like a dashboard like Acquia's dashboard or Pantheon's dashboard that can manage sites, but it can manage sites in a lot of customers bring their own cloud provider account. So it'll manage sites on anybody's cloud provider, anybody's account. So a lot of customers bring their own cloud provider. So they'll bring their own AWS or Azure, DigitalOcean, or whatever platform they're using. And they get the dashboard like Acquia or Pantheon to manage their sites on. And and then DevPanel automates everything. It takes care of the infrastructure, DevOps, CI/CD, security, scaling, compliance, and all those different things. But DrupalForge just uses the DevPanel API to automate all the things on the infrastructure. And then you can bring your own infrastructure, or you can get the infrastructure from one of the hosting providers, uh, any of these hosting providers or other hosting providers in the Drupal ecosystem as well. And then using DrupalForge, you can actually build your own set of templates that are for your school and for your organization that you would like to have spun up and use over. A lot of schools have hundreds of sites that are very similar, and those can be set up as templates that can be spun up. So that's the DrupalForge we say that's the vehicle, and DevPanel is the engine. And all of the workflows can be automated. So the old way, a lot of it is kind of bubblegum together, and you're messing around with Git configs and database dumps and so on. And if you're managing your own cloud, you need cloud expertise. Uh, if you're using the dev panel, this is the first capability that dev panel brings in is zero setup developer workflow. is you don't have to manage any of the infrastructure. You don't have to manage local dev environments. You don't have to manage Git. You don't have to manage any of the database. Everything is set up for you. Everything is secured for you, and it scales automatically. And it has all the built-in tools, and it's fully managed. So zero AWS experience is required, and the environment will pause and resume sessions automatically. And I'll give you a demo of this later, but it's a turnkey environment that you can put onto your own cloud provider. Oh. And then, so the first one is, um, and the second capability is security and compliance. So, so one is ease of use. Um, Second one is security and compliance. Everything is isolated, and there's different layers of security from having giving you automated backups and recovery, disaster recovery. The scenarios are built in for secret management and audit trails, and observability is built in. GDPR, CCPA, HIPAA, PCI, all that stuff is built in. FedRAMP, we're working on it right now uh, with some partners. The For perimeter security, DDoS protection, and WAF is built into it. So those are things you get out of the box by using DevPanel and DrupalForge. You have to configure it, of course, for your organizations, but those things are out of the box. You get those things turnkey. And
And kind of where that comes into play is setting up these permission systems with these Aaron classes with an AWS stack is something that for me the first time took several weeks. And then I didn't really know if I got it right. There's much longer stories involved in that effort. And what this does is creates a hardened shell up in your AWS that's already pre-configured and functional and has the site up there, and then avoids vendor lock-in. If you decide that you don't want to use DevPanel, everything still lives up there in your cloud and is still operational within AWS standards. That's
yeah,
the key of all that.
that actually reminds me, one of the first customers that we had for this wasn't an educational institution, but they were using. They had spent 3 people and 2 months configuring their AWS. And even after that, they weren't sure if it was configured correctly or if it would scale or if it would, if it was production grade. And then we were on a call with them and we did it. We had our automation scripts configure everything in 17 minutes for them. And we weren't even timing it, they were timing it. And then at the end, everything was pre-configured, everything was working, and that was like the magic that they saw, and they signed the same day. So that's something that you can take away. And all those scripts are all open source too. So that's something you can take away and use for your own infrastructure as well. Okay, so the third capability is cost control. And with cost control, normally when you're talking about with for legacy environments, you're looking at, you provision infrastructure and then you're just paying for infrastructure regardless of how much traffic you're getting or how much those sites are being used. That's in that infrastructure. And in the dev panel and Drupal Forge scenario, what you're doing is everything is set up as auto scaling. So when the load comes in, your cost will go up, right? Because you're serving that traffic and you're serving that load. But when the load goes down, your cluster scales down, and you can even set the sites to pause. Like dev environments can pause automatically, or your production environments can scale down, and you end up saving a lot of money with that as well. So you're never paying a flat cost for your uh, for your uh, for your compute and servers.
Examples for that would be shutting down things for the summertime in a collegiate environment, or a lot of organizations actually lock down their projects during the weekend as a security measure to keep open doors from being kicked in.
Yeah, and another great example is, your developers are working on sites, dev environments from, 9 to 6 weekdays. What happens to those dev environments if they're on the cloud? What happens to them the rest of the time? Why would they be on? So we shut them down automatically, and then the next day they come on, they click on, they they unpause it or resume those dev environments after they're paused, and it takes about a minute or 90 seconds for them to come up, and then you can work on it all day. And if you just leave it running, it'll automatically pause. So that's the other cost savings that you get is when you only run the environments when you need them. So the proof of concept, um, you know, DrupalForge was, if I go back to this slide, DrupalForge was built on top of DevPanel, and you can build on top of DrupalForge. You can build your own layer. You can take DrupalForge and modify it yourself. It's an open source project. We can modify it for you. There's a bunch of community members that are working on it. They'll modify it for you. But DrupalForge itself was built in 4 weeks. And not only can it launch sites in 5 seconds, but it can scale from one site to 1,000 sites in less than 10 minutes. Right? So it's a really good, solid infrastructure that's available to you now that you can run in your own cloud.
And the use cases for that large scaling is, for instance, it's actively used in some of the devathons in Europe. They have large numbers of people coming together to rapidly build software. And so they can just show up, get involved, click in, and go.
Yeah, DrupalCon, last DrupalCon in Europe, they had used this. Drupal in Day training, they had used this. For the European Commission hackathon, they had used DrupalForge, and that's how that's where we end up seeing how it scales up and down, and having thousands of people log in at the same time. So I'll show you a demo of that as well. So okay, um, how can this be used? So trainers and educators can use it. You can set up templates to actually train people on how to do development, and this is already being used by trainers and and in classes. You can set up templates for your departments and different agencies in your organization so that when a ticket comes in, or you can make it self-serve. So if a faculty wants to spin up a site for themselves or for a project, they can spin up a site. If a student group wants to spin up a site for their new group, they can do that as well. There's a template that complies with all the school standards, and you can set up those templates as well, and there can be different themes associated with it. And then the IT can be assured that all those sites will be HIPAA compliant, follows your brand guide, has all the compliance in there, and there's no single point of failure, so that they're not, you know, it's the sites are developed with their blessings basically, so they scale up and scale down automatically. Um, you have total control of the sites. The infrastructure and the sites can be managed internally or externally. So a lot of companies have us manage everything for them, and some companies have their internal staff that are familiar enough to manage their own infrastructure, so they manage it internally. So that's the beauty of this, is that you can take full control of it, or you can have it as a fully managed service. You can start off as a fully managed service and then over time take full control of it as well. And in rare cases, people have started off as fully in-house service, and then when people leave or something, that they turn back and give us control of it and say, "You guys manage it. We don't want to do it." So regardless, it's a fully optimized infrastructure that you get, and you still retain all the ownership is yours. All the data lives in your account. Okay, so it's the next gen infrastructure. Um, You're launching it in 5 seconds, developing it in the cloud. So none of the data, none of the environments live in anybody's laptop. Everything's done in the cloud. Everything's controlled there centrally. Everything's auto scaling and it auto pauses. You have full cost controls on it and decouples management and site provisioning. So that's me. Um, and then there's different add-ons as well. There's fully managed infrastructure, compliance, security, and then over on top of the open source stuff, you can get the fully managed things as well. And then there's AI integration as well that you can get. And we would bring in other teams to do this. But with Drupal, there's a lot of DrupalForge is now part of the AI initiative, and with that, you can get private AI, you can get AI guardrails, automated testing, AI skills for best practices, and for AI components like chatbots, semantic search, and AI content writers for creating SEO and AEO optimized content as well. So those are all add-ons that are available. And let me see if anyone has any questions. Otherwise, I can go to a quick demo. Any questions?
I want to see the demo.
All right. Okay, so here is DrupalForge this is the main site. You'll see a bunch of templates here that are built by, a lot of them are built by community members, different agencies, and then they maintain these demos themselves. Some of the demos we maintain. Um, this AI, Drupal CMS with AI, is actually maintained by the core Drupal AI team. So I'll show you that. If you want to try Drupal Canvas, you can do this and other things here as well. You go in here, you can watch a video of how this works. There's a write-up about this webinar we did, and you can go in here and you can launch this.
1, 2.
All right, so it launches. This is how fast it launches. So now you have a Drupal site in 2 seconds. Takes longer for the Drupal site to load than it does for us to provision, but here we can go in here, you can log in. And this is a Drupal site with AI built in, so you can actually use AI out of the box. So your AI, if you have your AI keys, we can actually the the infrastructure will manage your AI keys for you and can put in slices of your AI key into each site and can do cost management of that AI keys as well. So no one site can have runaway costs with the AI keys. So I can say, what is Drupal? And you'll see that this is hooked up with AI. Uh, in our demo environments, we put in $1 worth of AI credits so that when that $1 worth of tokens are expired, then you have to add in your own AI keys. But this way, when you spin up a site, it's got its AI keys already embedded in there. So, and then there's a browser-based VS Code, which is an IDE development environment that's built in. I'm going to
This
copy
is the
the
part
password
that always excites me.
and
Is Imagine this is your CIS 100 class. This is logging into a lockdown environment for each class that has all of the tools all ready to go and doesn't allow or allows whichever tools you want to restrict or include. Like if you want to block AI, for instance, or if you want to have it engaged here in your coding environment, you've got all your languages, all your tools, and everything ready to go in lockdown. I love that.
so this has a terminal built in. This is like VS Code in a browser, so Visual Studio Code in a browser, and this is something that normally users or developers actually run it on their desktop or on their laptop for doing development. So instead of setting up a whole local dev environment, they're getting it in a browser pre-configured for every site that they start in 5 seconds. Okay, so I can say Composer, and Composer is preloaded for them. And I can say Drush, and Drush is preloaded for them. So they can start working on it right away. And this is a live environment. So I can go into the web directory, I can go into index.php, and I can say PHP info die. So if I make any changes here, you can actually see the effect of those changes right away on the site. If I go back and I comment this out, go back here and I reload this page, it'll be back at Drupal. So this is just like using a local dev environment, but in the cloud. And
It does support multi-branch pulls, so you can develop and have nothing to do with production, all that good stuff, of course.
right. So that's something that if you go over here and you click manage, this is the dashboard, this is the dev panel engine behind it. And here you can do backups, you can look at the audit trail, you can set up webhooks, change the version of PHP that you're working with or you want to work with, set up custom domains, SSL certificates, look at the logs, invite other developers to work with you, change security levels, export the site, and there's a bunch of other things you can do with it. But also you can you can create other branches here as well. So this is just the main branch.
And you can control this for your organization. So if you want to push out an upgrade, you're upgrading production to a new version of PHP, you can push it out to users across a broad area of applications in a single moment.
Yeah, that's one thing that's important to note is that it's a good point, Will. If you have 100 sites, you can base them all on the single repo. And then when you make the change to that repo, you can actually push out changes to all those hundreds of sites.
And then
So,
you can also to manage your users in the same fashion. You're managing them through their access to repositories. And so you can yank and pull people. I've always wanted to do this demo on stage where all the developers start to go crazy once in a while. And I have someone like yank their control to the site and add another developer to the project. But it's that easy to central OAuth control of who has access to your resources. And all their data is never on their machine. It just goes away.
yeah. So this is the main branch, which is already built. And by the way, here's the pause um, timer. You can extend that if you want, but after that, this environment gets paused. Uh, here's the here's the main branch. It says this is deployed, and here's the develop branch. It says not deployed. So if you wanted to do some development, what you would do is you can build out the develop branch, and you can clone it. You can say copy the database, static files, and configuration from main, and security settings, leave it the same, configurations, leave it the same, and then you can deploy it. I won't do it here, but this is how you clone sites. And what else is something
With
interesting?
with Pantheon, that little feature is part of their platinum level. That means your testers can go in and create branches to do all their testing on and not have to engage in and not have to jump through any extra hoops. And instead of paying for that Pantheon platinum class, you're booking that against your existing AWS usage licenses.
So this is, and then if your app gets paused, for example, over here, if the application gets paused, then once the application is paused, if you're using DrupalForge or your own version of DrupalForge in a university, then your paused applications come over here, and you can see them paused over here, and you can restart them, and or you can delete them and so on. So this is how you manage the applications from here. So that's the two bits about DrupalForge and Dev Panel and the DrupalForge for higher ed. Um, again, it's a nonprofit and an open source project. All developers are invited to participate at any level in the leadership or the project, or for contributions. And you can take this and modify it and use it internally if you like, or however you like to use it. So that's it for the presentation. Any questions? All right, I got one thumbs up.
So the nice thing is you can actually just go over to DrupalForge and hit those buttons. It's just done. You want to go play with the brand new Drupal on the new version, you can just do it. Just type in that URL and you are there. If you wanted to see what Canvas is like, which is the next way of laying out content on the pages versus some of the other systems you may run into in the past, it's right there. Go have a look at it, hit that button, and you're done. This is all ready to spin up for you to go play with for an hour. If you want to see Drupal 11 and understand the differences of Drupal CMS, which is really just Canvas, then do it. Hit the button. Go look at it. It's neat.
Yeah,
Is there a dark mode? I have a hard time looking at large white screens.
I think
yeah,
it's
I
in your
think so.
browser.
Yeah, I do have dark reader. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just use Dark Reader. I agree with
That
you.
would,
I have a hard
yeah,
time.
that would be an issue for me, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I use that's the one
Hmm.
extension I use all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
me
there's
too.
Drupal Canvas is a thing that's really picking up steam right now. The
Hmm.
visual flow builder called Flow Drop is allows you to build agents and wire them up visually, and you can tell it like what task to do. So that's really cool. And so there's a demo for that. It's pre-wired up. Drupal Chrome Prompt API. This is actually using the Gemini Nano, which is the extension that's actually built into your Chrome
Okay,
browser. So
I
if you want to try
I can hang
API
out
that's built into,
because
uh,
it's just like a camp session.
I'll
if you
mute
want
her.
to try the, if you
Oh,
want
I
to try
can't.
the AI that's built into your browser itself, you can try this one.
I don't know.
I think
Uh,
we had a question, I think.
yeah, go ahead.
Did you have a question, Laurel? Oh, maybe not.
No, I
I
did
think
not.
our phone.
Oh, okay. I thought someone had a question. Sorry. Go
I
continue.
think I was accidentally unmuted. I'm sorry. I had a
Oh, okay. Okay.
family little blow up there for a second. I did have a question though, and that's about the adoption, and particularly with government teams. You know, there's so many the Drupal for government has been so well adopted, but there's so many distributed teams, and I'm wondering what has your experience been in trying to promote this for use amongst all those poor solo operators across the nation that are working on those teams that probably got gutted by
Yeah,
the
that's
government
a
here.
it's a great question. Um, Will, Will has a lot
Well,
of government
the
experience. So
So I've been wanting this in my teams. So here's who you are up against. You're up against Microsoft with their VDI product, which is a terrible product for developer. It does not support the latest things, and you spend enormous amounts of time maintaining it. And then you've got the new player on the floor, which is Amazon Workspace. So Amazon Workspace is one that's kind of pushing into the Microsoft area. Both of those are big dollar subscription type environments. Um, I, I I think Amazon Workspace is fine. I personally like both of these perfectly reasonably well, and I think it comes down to expenses. So VS Code is basically what you're getting with either of the systems, and they're just running in an environment. The thing I like about the reason I play with DevPanel, and I'm not a paid employee, I just happen to like to support this that in DrupalForge. I am on the DrupalForge board. I take no money from that. I think they're great projects for virtualizing and distributing the tools in a fashion that brings them to the table fast. As a professional architect in government, at the end of every project, I'm like, hey, can we schedule 1 day on the clock to clean up our security issues as we leave a project and delete all our SQL files and everything? And nobody has ever said yes. And I think that that kind of security is like not just, well, we're going to expect people to take care of it, which we do. It's more about, hey, how about we just do zero trust? How about we have environments that are ready to set up for you at the very first instance and automatically work and automatically go away. And it doesn't matter if somebody grabs your laptop and runs because you just call, hey, pull my Git repo, boom, that laptop doesn't have access anymore. I think it's an amazing tool. The thing that sold me originally was that user control, that ability to just flip people into a project and pull them out. And while that doesn't connect much to this, what you're seeing with click the button to launch and try a demo, it absolutely connects to, I'm going to work on a project every day and I'm going to pull over a developer from another team who's really good at this one thing so he can come work on my project for a little bit. So he's got access for a day and now it's gone. And like that, I love that.
So we have
That's it.
about 1 minute left. If there are any other questions, comments?
All right. There's my contact info. If you guys, if anyone wants to get a hold of me, thank you for being here, and I appreciate the opportunity to present. And thank you, Will.
Okay, thank you, Sal, and everybody
Thank
who
you.
joined.
Yep.
Thank
See ya.
you. Yep.
Bye.
That's